Hello and welcome to a new video. I had to think about what I want to show at my channel next, and I first planned on showing the conclusion of the International Championship season, where quite a while ago we took a look at the first two games of the season, and I also still plan on doing that. However, today we are starting by fulfilling the wish of my Patreon supporters, who in the last vote voted that they want to see another game of the Royal League season on this channel. And the game that we are taking a look at today just finished recently, so my memories are still fresh, while for the International Championship, my memories aren't fresh any longer anyway, so I thought let's just start with taking a look at that game from the Royal League. And from that season, we have already seen a game of the channel. That was the game where I was joined by Daniel, that I played against Daniel, and that we then commented together here on this channel. And that was the first game of the season, so I lost that game. And as you remember the game, I was a bit unhappy about the loss. Maybe if I would have just taken the internet, or if the Hollywood timing would have been different, I could have maybe won the game. I had a strong position going into H3, so I was a bit unhappy about losing that one. And sadly, I then immediately afterwards started with another loss against Jaob, starting the season with 2 losses. However, since then the season has been going quite nicely. I managed to win the next 3 games, and with in the King League the top two players advancing to the Emperor's League, the highest division, I actually still have some chances here to advance if I get 2 more wins in. And the game that we are taking a look at today is the game against Arne, who, as you can see, has had the perfect season so far, playing 5 games, winning all of them, being at 10 points. If I should manage to defeat him, I'm only 2 points behind him. Then there's one more game left. So if Arne then loses the last game, which will be against Daniel, then it could happen that we are both at 10 points, and if I should have won against him, I might have good chances for the tiebreaker. So I still have some hopes here to advance, and with that, of course, I was very excited to see what I will be able to do in the game against Arne. And now, without further ado, let's take a look at the game. In this game, I am playing in the second position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And importantly for a 2-player game, there's no Bach in the game. However, there are Shakespeare and Gaudi, so it could be a game where having printing presses could be quite strong to have a setup for those culture leaders, as there is no Bach to use. Then there's no Hollywood and no internet in H3, so not a very big payoff wonder. However, there is Gandhi to potentially hide behind. There's Chaplin for a bit of theater synergy, but no Marlene. We have Pierre, but no internet. We have some lab leaders with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and there's also Churchill and the Manhattan Project for the military. Also the Red Cross is there. In H2 we have the Ocean Liner Service and the Suez Canal, so those are some interesting wonders. We also have James Watt, who is a bit difficult to use in 2 players. We have Nobel as a solid leader. We have Napoleon as a potential counter maybe if a player is going for a culture heavy strategy. In H1 we have Universitas but no Silk Road. We have both the Happy Face Solution Wonders, St. Peter's Basilica and Forbidden City. We have both the military action leaders, Jan Shishka, of Org, also Genghis Khan to help with the strength. We have Columbus, and then Saladin is a very strong and solid leader, also especially in 2 players, as well as Isabella. There's also no Acropolis in the game. Arne's in first position, and he just takes Hammurabi, which should certainly be the correct decision for him. Alex is not really that great, and then just taking yellow, of course, also not really an option. And for me, I maybe don't have the greatest things to choose from. I could maybe take Alex plus a yellow card, but playing Alex against Hammurabi would feel a bit bad. Also, then the Engineering Genius would fall down to 1 civil action for Arne. He could maybe even to take it together with the pyramids, and then Arne would just have a very strong start, and I would be playing with Alex, which I didn't like. I could just take 2 yellows. Maybe I could try letting the pyramids stay in 3, but at the end I think it's just best here to take the Engineering Genius, get the 2 resources, making sure that Arne doesn't have access to it for 1 civil action with Hammurabi. That means that the pyramids will fall down to 2 civil actions for Arne, so he can maybe relatively easily take it with Hammurabi, but at least he has to pay an additional civil action, and maybe he also doesn't need the additional civil action of the pyramids as much with having Hammurabi. For my civilization, or as a plan, I thought that I could then at the next turn go for Sun Tzu, who can be maybe a counter against Hammurabi. And I think there are some interesting synergies. I could set up a colonization game, there's a Columbus in the game, but there's also Genghis Khan and Shishka, so I think there is some strong Sun Tzu synergy in the game. And depending on what other wonders could come out, I think just taking him in the Hanging Gardens could be interesting, because the Hanging Gardens could just help me having more workers available in the military and really trying to maybe put some pressure on Arne and try to not let him get away with just using Hammurabi unpunished. So I thought that could maybe be a fine counter, and with that I just took the Engineering Genius here. Now it's Arne's turn. I was interested to see whether he will pick the pyramids for 2 civil actions. He elects Hammurabi, increases his population, builds a mine, and he indeed will just go for the pyramids. Could have taken 2 yellows and could have let the pyramids stay on 2 for me, and if it's taken away, maybe could hope for towards an H1 wonder, but the pyramids, the additional civil action, can just be very useful for the rest of the game, so maybe just making sure that he has that wonder available is a fine call here. As a leader, I have now Sun Tzu available. I could also go for Moses and Hanging Gardens, being a somewhat interesting combination, but I rather wanted to have the additional draws and the synergies that there are with Sun Tzu this game, also having him as a counter towards Hammurabi. So I went for Sun Tzu here. I want to build a mine, and then the question is, am I taking the Hanging Gardens, or am I just hoping to get something like Universitas, maybe Forbidden City relatively early, to then go for an H1 wonder directly? And here I decided to go for the Hanging Gardens, because I think it can actually be quite a fine wonder, and with the plan that I'm going towards, it could be quite good, because I, as said, can get more population. I can put more population into the military, and that could help me reaching an amount of military strength that maybe could even allow me to go for some aggressions and really put some pressure on Arne. And so I think the Hanging Gardens could be interesting, but also in case I want to make a transition into a more peaceful game, then also the Hanging Gardens could allow me to go for some printing presses set up for those culture leaders, so I thought the Hanging Gardens could be quite fine here, and then I also know for certain that I will be able to use the Engineering Genius. I was interested in my draws, of course. I have one tactic, maybe not the best one for Sun Tzu, also 2 events, which could be fine, but sadly not a colony or strength event that could maybe let me start setting up a very nice game plan. Now it's Arne's turn. He will build a second lab to get some science production going. Then it's maybe a bit tricky for him what to take. He decides here to just take a bunch of yellow cards. The 2 ridgelands will help him getting very quickly into iron. The frugality allows him to increase his population 2 times at the next turn. He doesn't want to go into consumption yet. He lets this copy of iron fall down to 1 for me, but he makes sure that it isn't on a discard spot. The second copy is coming immediately after, or is coming as well, so there's no point in grabbing the iron for 3 here. And I guess just taking some yellows might be the best thing that he can do here. He could go for the masonry, but masonry and iron with having no science from leader and wonder could be a bit too much of an investment. Now it's my turn, and I really wanted to move the deck forward. The question is what event to push. I could of course push the Barbarians, as maybe I want to try being the strongest anyway. The thing being, Arne has the pyramids, a wonder that doesn't produce any culture, while I have the Hanging Gardens. I will probably push a lot, so I will probably have the most culture, and likely I might not get any benefit out of this event, and it might just be a bit annoying. Not putting it in the deck now makes me a bit more flexible on what game plan I want to go for, and with that I at the end went for the new deposits, which I also didn't like that much, because I thought while I will end up taking the iron, I thought just investing now into iron upgrades would of course be fine to get some economy going, but could also distract me from setting up some aggressive setup. And then if I now put the new deposits in and I maybe go in towards building a bit of military, while Arne just goes into iron, then he could of course benefit more from the new deposits, but I will take the iron. Maybe I will find the time to invest into those iron upgrades, and then I rather went with the new deposits than with the barbarians. The development of politics is actually revealed, giving me even more draws. I have now a colony and 2 colonization cards, so it could be an idea to maybe set up a bit of a colonization game. Arne now also gets some additional draws, which might be quite helpful for him with having Hammurabi. Then it's my turn. I will increase my population, and I will also build a second lab, not delaying the science production, leaving me with 2 civil actions. I thought even about just not taking the iron here, as I thought maybe it could just be a distraction, but now that I put new deposits in, I think I kind of have to go for it and at least it could still be fine just going for some iron upgrades. Maybe I actually still have enough time to go for some military pressure afterwards. So I will go for the iron. With going for the iron, the question is, do I also want to go for the masonry? The masonry, I think, being a potentially very strong technology in 2-player, but also not a player counts, but in 2-player maybe especially. Both I and Arne haven't built our HA wonders yet, so we can save some civil actions immediately, then save a lot of resources later on in the game. There are some interesting wonders like Ocean Liner Service, Suez Canal, maybe Forbidden City, Universitas, where even more civil actions can be saved. And with that, I was at the end willing to take the masonry, as I think it's a strong technology. Getting it for 1 civil action I think is quite a nice deal. However, it could be a bit awkward spending science into iron and masonry, especially if I want to leave myself open to, for example, towards getting into knights. At the end of my turn, it was a bit tricky on what cards to keep, because I have a colony, but I can't keep the colony, both colonization cards. I have a tactic. I thought about revealing the Legion tactic, but I also, with not having found any strength events or maybe in other colonies, I felt like I also want to get as many draws as possible, so revealing the tactic didn't feel too great. The Legion tactic maybe not being the best tactic to upgrade anyway. And while it could of course backfire, I actually made the decision to discard the tactic here, hoping that with the draws that I will be having in the upcoming turns, I could just maybe get a new tactic. I could also think about keeping the aggression, but for now I don't know if I maybe get Jan Žižka and a very strong military game, and I might still draw more aggressions. At the end I just kept a colony in 1 colonization card, as setting up a colony game could potentially be interesting with the Suez Canal being in there. Of course, there was also Saladin available for 2 civil actions here. I could have just taken him, setting up a more economy-focused game, but if I want to take Saladin and the iron, which I think I have to take the iron if I go for a more economy-focused game, then I delay the second lab, and that didn't feel too great, so I was willing to give up on Saladin here, because there's Jan Žižka who can be strong, Genghis Khan, Columbus, so I was happy to not take Saladin here. Then I said I will keep the colony and 1 colonization card. I do actually draw immediately some new tactics, and both of them could be very interesting, especially if I should end up getting Jan Žižka, so that could be interesting. The Pestilence could maybe be a fine event to see it, as I might have an advantage in my population with having the Hanging Gardens. Also another colonization card, but no strength events yet. And I was very interested to see what will happen during Arne's turn, because as you can see, there's actually Jan Žižka on the row. I was interested to see whether Arne is actually willing to take Jan Žižka here for 3 civil actions, taking him away from me, or if he is giving me the chance to take him. He will take the iron first of all. He uses the frugality to increase his population, and then he will increase his population again, meaning he won't actually take Jan Žižka, and as you can see, he will actually go for Saladin here, and then it takes the rich land with his last civil action. With all of those rich lands, he will be able to get into iron upgrades extremely quickly. Going for Saladin is understandable, because I think he's just a very useful leader. Having lots of civil actions in a 2-player game can be quite strong. However, it also has some downsides here, I think, because he is now committing to an H1 leader. Maybe not taking Žižka for 3 here is fine, even though against Sun Tzu it can backfire, but maybe it's fine to not take Žižka here, but if he maybe would have not gone for Saladin here, there's maybe the chance, or then maybe I have to make a decision. Do I want to take Žižka for 2 civil actions, or do I again potentially miss out on him? And now I know that I don't need to take Jan Žižka already at the next turn. I can just wait until he falls down to 1 civil actions, which has some advantages for me. But we can see Arne has some hand space issues. I mean, maybe it could have been fine then, instead of taking Saladin, just building a step of the pyramids. But I mean, Saladin will be a solid leader and can also help with the strength in case it will be really needed. I seed the Pestilence into the deck, as I want to move the deck forward. Of course, going for a colony here could be interesting, but now with having drawn this tactic, with there being 2 copies of Knights, and with me having this Jan Žižka, of course I can go for Jan Žižka and still try to go for some colonies, but it could be a distraction. It might be revealed at a time where I'm just trying to threaten an aggression or something, and out of the sudden I either get weaker or miss out on the colony. So I rather wanted to put in the Pestilence, which with having the Hanging Gardens could also end up being a very fine event for me, especially with maybe not needing as many workers in the military to get a threatening amount of strength. with having Shishka. So I see that a pestilence, the event revealed, is the development of planning. The options for the development of planning are crafts, markets, and settlement. I had to think about if I could do something really powerful with the additional resources, but it isn't really the case, and with that I just chose to take the development of settlement. I will then increase my population again. And this turn is a little bit tricky because I decided that I want to take this copy of Breakthrough. I think with me having gone for Iron Masonry and also planning to go into Knights, every additional science is just so valuable, and I also really don't want to let this Breakthrough be available for Arne, who could really make good use out of it. So I really wanted to take that, but I have already some hand space issues, which is a bit of a downside with having decided to go for both of those technologies. And I will now use the Engineering Genius in the Hanging Gardens. That makes now space in my hand. And I thought about if I should already develop the Masonry, but that is a bit of problematic because now I can't develop it with the Breakthrough, which could delay it a little bit until I will be able to get into Knights. And also maybe it could still be an idea to go for Iron first, but if I want to do this, then again maybe then I can't develop the Masonry now, so it would also be a bit of a commitment. And so at the end I actually made the choice to take the Patriotism here, which could be useful. I plan on building up a lot of military. I will need some resource for it. Playing the Patriotism will give me an additional draw. Maybe it could lead me towards drawing an aggression or potentially nice strength event. So I think it's a useful card for me, but now again I have some hand space issues. At the next turn I can develop a technology, which already gives me space enough for 2 cards to take. But still, I probably also want to get out of corruption, and the thing is that Arne might let this copy of Knights stay on 2 civil actions, and if he does that, it could pose an awkward question for me, because I need to spend 3 civil actions then to take both Shishka and the Knights. I could just not take the Knights, hoping for the second copy, but especially if that also is revealed relatively quickly afterwards, Arne could just deny the Knights from me, and I maybe with developing the Masonry already, it would be a commitment, but it could make it more easily possible for me to maybe take Shishka and Knights if I need to, because I think with this tactic that has just some huge potential, and it would be a shame if I miss out on that potential because of the turn just being too awkward. And so I'm not sure if taking the Patriotism is correct, as maybe I should have left me with, I maybe should have focused more on having more hand space, but let's see how that will play out. I will actually keep the colony. I wanted to just make sure to be able to push again, and I also kept the tactic. I could have also kept the colonization card, but for now I myself didn't seed any colonies, and I was hoping that also I won't have to bother about needing to defend myself. Still no strength events, so Vlada not really allowing me to set up something strength related here, but at least maybe when I go for Shishka now. Arne might still be quite afraid of potential events, maybe that can potentially lead him to some awkward turns. He this turn will go for the Iron, thanks to all of this rich lands, can potentially go for 3 upgrades, however he is willing to miss out on 1 upgrade in order to take both the Theocracy and the Irrigation. And I think those picks are fine picks. The Theocracy, with having Saladin and the Pyramids, I think could end up being a very strong government form for him, as he has his civil actions already quite nicely covered, and if it should turn out to be a military-heavy game, which he definitely needs to worry about with Jan Shishka being on the road and with me having Sun Tzu, then the Theocracy could be extremely helpful for him. So I think an important pick here by him, which otherwise could leave him in a very vulnerable spot. And then having the Irrigation, of course, also is quite important in a 2-player game. And as said, he can sadly relatively easily let the Knight stay in 2 civil actions. He misses out on the Code of Laws, but I think he doesn't need the technology really, and I actually also won't take it, as I have already Masonry, Iron, plan on going into Knights, and so I will not go for it, and the Code of Laws actually gets discarded, which doesn't happen that often in a 2-player game. I start my turn by seeding the reds into the deck, just again moving the deck forward. I will gain some knowledge, I hopefully will be able to prepare for it, and maybe if Arne starts going into Irrigation, there's the chance that he will lose some food. The event revealed from the development deck is the development of Great Roots. And now we see the issue. I first of all need to develop something to make space in my hand. Maybe I could have just gone for iron. I could have gone for 2 iron upgrades and taken Jan Žižka, just getting my production started. Maybe I should have done that. And I won't actually take, I will take Žižka, but I won't take the knights. The second copy isn't in the row. It could backfire heavily if maybe Arne doesn't take this copy, if maybe either he denies the second one if it is revealed at his next turn. At least it would be costly, but it would be awkward for me, and Arne could, for example, just finish the pyramids and take the knights or doing something like that. But if it isn't revealed, then at least it's a bit of a tricky question for Arne. Is he willing to potentially miss out on the knights? Or is he taking that, but with that also making sure that I will be able to go for the knights? And so I was in that situation not willing to take knights and Žižka, because at the moment I have 4 corruption. I could of course build a warrior, but that warrior isn't really needed. I just want to build 3 knights and with Žižka and get the medieval army tactic 3 times. So that just felt awkward, and I was willing to take the risk of potentially getting denied the knights, which at least would be costly for Arne. So it also would do something, but I would of course prefer to have the knights myself. And while I could go for the iron now, I kind of wanted to leave myself open to already start going into knights at the next turn, to maybe put some pressure on Arne. I have drawn this enslave here, which I will keep in hand, and which is maybe a chance that I will pull it off. So if the knights, the second copy, are very late, it could maybe be better to get into iron first, but here I decided to go for the masonry, finish the hanging gardens, increase my population, take Jan Žižka. I will not elect him yet, not showing the medieval army tactic, which maybe makes it a bit less likely that Arne would be willing to go for a knight's denial. And then if the knights should be available for me the next turn, I could take them, develop them, elect Jan Žižka, upgrade a tactic, build 2 knights, and immediately put quite some pressure on Arne, while this wouldn't be that easily possible with going for the iron first, because then I would still have to finish the hanging gardens. But of course, if I don't go for knights at the next turn, then it could have been maybe just better to go for iron first. But even then, I can still go for 2 iron upgrades at the next turn if I want to, and with the new deposits coming, I might have a fine amount of resources anyway, so that it's maybe fine to not grind out every bit of additional resource that I can get. Yeah, now of course I was very interested to see how the knight situation will develop. Will the second copy be in the row after my turn? Which will copy Arne decide to take this copy of knights? It was quite interesting for me, and I was of course hoping that I might have a chance to get the second copy as quickly as possible. And as you can see, I actually keep the tactic, the aggression. I draw another aggression, and now also finally some strength events. Sadly, I won't be able to put them in the next deck, because Arne decides to put 1 event of himself now in the deck, opens the development of science, and will now this turn take this copy of knights. The second copy is not in the row. With that, I'm guaranteed to get the second copy, but I don't know yet when I will be able to get this copy. Arne takes the knights, finishes the pyramids, increases his population, and then with the rich land goes for his last iron upgrade. And now we can see that while I didn't put any strength events in there, just playing Sun Tzu and pushing might still put a bit of an effect on Arne, because Arne here, and it probably is the right call, just takes the strength from Saladin. But I know that unless he has seeded a strength event of himself, but that would be a very brave move, to be honest, now that he has seeded, well, knowing that I have Žižka and still access to knights. But yeah, I know that the strength doesn't matter at all, but he is willing to sacrifice the civil action. He has still 5 thanks to the pyramids, but still, at least me having Sun Tzu is costing him now a little bit. As you can see, I actually decided to not use my politics phase here. And the reason for that is that I will improve 2 of the events that I put in there during my turn. I will go for 2 iron upgrades this turn. As you can see, there are no copy of knights on the row for me. And with going for 2 iron upgrades, the new deposits will be a better event for me after this turn. And also, as you can see, I will increase my population, and getting hit by the rats now would be meaning that I will play on 1 population less, and that combined with the pestilence that would be coming would be a bit bad if the rats are revealed now. Additionally, not seeding now could leave the illusion to Arne that there are actually some strength events in there. I won't get stronger this turn, but I will actually show this tactic in Alexian Shishka, and Arne might be thinking, he really doesn't want to build any warriors or something because he wants to wait for knights, and there could actually be some strength events in there, while if I now would push, it would send some very big signals towards Arne that he doesn't really need to be concerned much about potential strength events coming. And with that, I just missed out on seeding here. I will increase my population to prepare myself for reds. I will reveal the tactic, Alexian Shishka. There might be the chance that the age will be ending before my next turn, so I kind of have to do this. Sadly, that means that Arne might be able to copy this tactics relatively soon. He can plan towards copying this tactic, and that could make it a bit tricky, actually threatening an aggression. However, there's still a chance, and I will definitely keep an aggression in hand. And then after that I will just go for 2 iron upgrades. Sadly, that means that even if knights fall down to 2 civil actions, and then I have enough civil actions to take them, develop them, and also play the patriotism, I have not enough resources to build 3 knights, which is why I thought about not going for the iron mines. But the thing is, there's at least a chance that the new deposits will be revealed before my next turn, which then again would allow me to actually go for 3 knights, and if not, then going for 2 knights maybe could also be fine. I decided to keep 1 colonization card, the Foray and the Enslave. I draw some new cards, the Raider, so another strength event, and the Strategic Territory. Arne seeds, and the Scientific Breakthrough is revealed. So his event is out now, meaning that all of my events are still in there, and Arne still has to be very much concerned about them. It also means that I have now full knowledge about the next 3 events, which is nice. Arne this turn goes for the cartography. I think potentially that could also be an interesting turn to just do a theocracy revolution, having that government form going, doing a revolution without any corruption. But Arne is willing to play this turn normally, and interestingly is willing to go for the cartography. Again, maybe me playing Sun Tzu could play some part in his decision here, because he could be thinking that I have also seeded some colonies, maybe doesn't want to let the cartography be available for myself, as it could be quite strong for me if I get the cartography now and then get some colonies, go for a Suez Canal with the masonry that I have. And so he's maybe partly denying it, maybe partly taking it as a gamble, hoping that maybe I've pushed some colonies with Sun Tzu, but maybe of course also he has a colony pushed into the deck now himself. Also, of course, the strength allows him to now take the civil action from Saladin again, by not getting weaker, but I think he will actually get stronger this turn even more anyway. He will take the St. Peter's Basilica. Another reason why maybe he was willing to delay a potential revolution, if he wants to go for one anyway, because he has a lot of production, and having a way to invest that could be important. If he doesn't go for St. Pete's, might soon fall a bit behind in culture, and the St. Peter's Basilica could be quite helpful to maybe set himself up for some culture leaders, but also for a military game, together with the theocracy, could put him in a position where he has 3 happy faces without requiring any worker anywhere. So I think that those might be some good reasons to delay the revolution, but has also maybe some downsides. He will then go for the knights, build some units now while still only missing out on H1 draws, and also with that he potentially can do a revolution to theocracy at the next turn, build another knight, and then at the next turn he will be able to copy my tactics, so with that he can really build up a lot of strength if he needs to. He only takes 1 card of the row, meaning H1 doesn't end yet. It's my turn now, and I this turn am a lot better prepared for both reds and new deposits, and new deposits would actually allow me to be quite a bit more threatening, which I think could be important. With that I was willing to push, and I started now pushing finally a strength event with the Foray. So I push, and I was very happy to see that the new deposits are indeed revealed. Arne of course gets 1 resource more out of this, but maybe I at this point might actually need the resources more, so I do think it ends up being a very fine event, especially with the timing of it being revealed now, allowing myself to invest into 3 knights now instead of only 2. And yeah, I will take the knights already this turn. Of course, I know that there are no strength events coming, but at this point I would even be in danger of an aggression if I don't increase my strength. And of course, I want to be a bit threatening. I will get some culture reduction started, and I also, same as Arne, can now spend some military actions in H1 instead of H2. The main and big question for this turn was whether I am willing to use the patriotism here. The patriotism, it would be a nice opportunity to do it now, to use it now, because even with not using it, I will still build 3 knights. And then it's the question if I will find a good way to use it later on. I have only 4 civil actions, I have to be careful about my hand space, so making sure to get rid of it now could be important. But there's also the chance of taking another breakthrough. We are both low in science. Arne could just easily take it, even though if I go for 3 knights, I felt like Arne might need to do a revolution if he wants to be safe. And I thought about, because playing the patriotism could even allow me to go for a 4th knight. It doesn't fulfill a 4th tactic, but still gives me 2 strength more. And I was thinking about if those 2 additional strength could actually make it that I have chances to pull an aggression off. However, with Arne having the option of going for a Theocracy Revolution, building a knight and copying the upgraded medieval army tactic, he will, even with when I go for 4 knights, and he has also the chance to take the strength from Saladin, he will be fine and not in danger of an aggression. However, I then thought about if building a fourth knight might make it that Arne has to go for a Theocracy Revolution, because I thought maybe it could be nice to force his actions here. It might be a somewhat nice thing for him to do anyway, but there are some interesting cards that he might want to take, and also it would delay his St. Peter's Basilica, meaning he has that wonder still lying around, which could be interesting if there are some strong H2 wonders revealed early, which could mean that Arne doesn't have the chance to take them. And so I thought it could be nice to force his actions here a little bit. However, I came to the conclusion that 3 knights are actually already enough to maybe force his actions, as without a revolution he doesn't have enough military actions to build a knight and copy the tactic, and that limits his strength potential quite significantly. He also needs the happy face. Of course, he could then finish the St. Peter's Basilica, but also with less military actions he is less well prepared to defend himself. So I am not planning to build a 4th knight, which would be awkward anyway because the pestilence is coming, but if I would be able to pull off an enslaved, then I would actually have enough food to increase my population again. So I was thinking about it, but I think that's not an option here. And then I at the end was willing to not use the patriotism, take the breakthrough, which might not be taken by Arne anyway, as he might now do a revolution. But I just also still thought for myself that 2 additional signs could be useful. But there's certainly the danger that I could have some hand space issues now, because soon I will lose this worker to pestilence, and then it's the question when I again will have a chance to use the patriotism. So I'm not 100% certain if I actually did the right call here, and maybe just playing the patriotism, making sure that I have enough hand space, could be more important. But on the other hand, the 2 science is quite strong, so I think it is still a fine decision. I keep the aggression, even though I was not optimistic that I will be able to use it, but it would still be bad if Arne decides to just ignore that military pressure and gets away with it. And I also keep the raiders as another strength event. Also, now that I fulfill all of those tactics, I actually start to run a little bit away with the culture. Now it's Arne's turn, H2 starts. And he indeed does a revolution as I suspected it. He builds a knight, is able to copy the medieval army tactic with that, is already at 14 strength without using the strength of Saladin, so he is completely safe, and also would have been safe if I would have gone for another knight. But I'm still stronger, and I still will be a bit difficult for Arne to overtake me. I guess he can finish the St. Peter's Basilica, go for another unit, but he also will lose a population to the pestilence soon, so I was confident enough to put another strength event in the deck with the raiders. And the pestilence is indeed revealed, so both I and Arne lose a free population. Arne will have some uprising issues because of that, but he will be able to fix those with going for the St. Peter's Basilica. Alright, and this turn there are some interesting cards that appeared in the row. There's this early Ocean Liner service, and I was extremely happy to see that, because now with Arne having that St. Peter's Basilica lying around, He's missing one civil action. If I let the ocean liner service stay in the 2 civil action area, he's missing one civil action to finish the St. Peter's Basilica and take it, meaning that I can just get the ocean liner service for in the 1 civil action area at my next turn guaranteed, which is extremely strong. It's exactly what I need. I have the masonry, and it will give me a lot of population. And next to the ocean liner, there's actually Shakespeare coming down the row. And with me knowing now that I will have a lot of population available, setting up for Shakespeare could be quite interesting, and because of that I decided to take irrigation and printing press here. The irrigation is just a nice way to avoid famine in later on in the game that I wanted to leave myself with, and with the printing press I just know for certain that I will be able to make use out of Shakespeare, as there are 2 copies of operas. Arne has no printing press, and with that would depend on journalism if he decides to go for a Shakespeare denial here. So I do think that is quite interesting. I thought a little bit about taking Forbidden City now, and then maybe building 2 steps or going for an iron upgrade with the plan of finishing it at the next turn and then taking the ocean liner, making even more use out of the masonry, making sure to get more civil actions, and I think it could be somewhat interesting. But then I can't take irrigation and printing press, and I do think that is just too strong, getting ocean liner service plus Shakespeare, so I decided against that plan, especially because I also don't really need the ignored unhappy workers at the moment. So I take the irrigation, I take the printing press. Now it's of course the thing that I have a full hand. And with that, I either float a civil action after I can go for an iron upgrade, or I need to commit to a technology already, and I think it's better to commit to a technology, because at the next turn ideally I want to take Shakespeare, so I need to make space in my hand anyway. And I decided that I want to commit to printing presses first, because if I indeed go for the ocean liner, then in not that many turns I might already have population that I can put into printing press, while the irrigation I might only need just at the end of H2 to develop it, to then have it available for later on as a way to avoid famine. And so I think that is fine here, developing the printing press, even though it is of course a bit of a commitment, but at least I have the breakthrough out of my hand and have a bit of hand space again. So now I was happy about this ocean liner service coming down the road. Nonetheless, I'm stuck on low civil actions. I don't know when I will get a government form. For the moment, I don't really have enough science to get a government form, and so I still was worried about some things. I draw some cards, 2 aggressions, which are not really that useful at the moment, and the inhabited territory, which is a bit tricky to push with Arne having the cartography, and also actually with the Suez Canal being in the deck. Arne this turn finishes the St. Peter's Basilica. As you can see, he's missing 1 civil action to take the ocean line. Instead he will go for the irrigation, goes for an upgrade, and then actually goes even for a 2nd upgrade, which is interesting because he could have taken the rifleman here. Interesting that he is not willing to take the rifleman at all. Maybe he wanted to leave himself at least with the option of getting the ocean liner, but I think it's clear that I will definitely take it. So I guess in 2-player games it can sometimes be completely fine skipping military text. Nonetheless, I found it a bit interesting, as he could have not taken that here, but it would come at a cost. That additional upgrade will allow Arne to increase his population at the next turn. He's very low in science, maybe building an additional lab, building an additional farm. That all could be interesting, and not being able to do this could be a bit tricky for him to use his civil actions at the next turn. It could also be tricky then for him to get out of corruption. So with that in mind, I think it is actually understandable to skip the rifleman here, as I think the next turn could indeed look quite awkward if he isn't able to increase his population. With that being the case, I was actually a bit unhappy about only having a card to see it where I really have to think about if I'm willing to put it into the deck, because the top cards here are the reds, and I thought it would be quite nice to remove the option of Arne to increase his population and also costing him 4 food now. And also for myself, the reds being revealed would be quite nice, because sadly at the moment, with the turn that I'm planning to go for, I have some corruption issues, and there's also not really an easy way to avoid those. Even if I build 2 steps with the masonry and the ocean liner, I would not be able to get out of corruption. So if I seed now, I save myself 2 resources with avoiding corruption, and I make sure that Arne loses 4 food, and that maybe his next turn is a bit awkward. The question is that worth putting the inhabited territory into the deck, which won't be that useful for myself, because I have already lots of population when I now go for the ocean liner, while for Arne, who has only 2 irrigation, it could be a big improvement, and Arne has actually the cartography. There is a Suez Canal in the game, and that was a very tough call for me to make, with saving 2 resources for myself as said. And at the end I decided that I am not willing to push. I just thought that colony could be too big for Arne, and I don't want to give him that. But it will mean that I have corruption this turn, and that Arne might just be able to increase his population at the next turn. And I was a bit unhappy that I didn't have another option to seed, but I mean I decided to keep this aggression in hand despite knowing that maybe I won't be able to use it anyway, so I could have kept another H1 event, which in hindsight might have been more important. So I will definitely take the Ocean Liner, and I will also definitely take Shakespeare here. I think that has a lot of potential and could make up for some weaknesses that my civilization has. For the last civil action, it was then a bit of a question between just playing a civil action, effectively building 2 steps of the Ocean Liner, maybe having more civil actions available at the next turn, or if I'm willing to take the Rifleman here. And at the end I decided that I am willing to take the Rifleman, because with me going for Shakespeare, I might just run away with the culture, and Arne might be pushed towards a military heavy approach, and then having the Rifleman could end up being important. Nonetheless, it could also be a bit tricky, because as you can see I already have a full hand again. I can use some civil actions on my own civilization with finishing Ocean Liner, maybe already building a printing press at my next turn, but nonetheless I still have a full hand then, and it could be a bit awkward. I might need to develop the irrigation earlier than I would really need to develop it, and it could be awkward if there's a government form in the row that I kind of need to take. So maybe it could be fine to take the gamble here, not take the Rifleman, but I will lose Jan Žižka when I go for Shakespeare, and I just felt like having the Rifleman could be important, but it's actually a close call, because in 2-player games sometimes you need to be greedy, and that Rifleman will hinder me with my hand space quite a bit. But at the end I just thought it could still be very important having that Rifleman around. I will again draw some cards. Again, not really cards that I would like to push, which I was a bit annoyed by, because I would really like to again get some more info about the deck. The Ravages of Time is at least nice to have in hand, so that I know that I won't lose the Hanging Gardens. That's quite useful, but again, it's the question if I'm willing to put a colony into the deck. Arne isn't seeding. I was hoping that maybe he would seed, so that at least he would still lose the 4 food, but sadly he isn't. Is able to increase his population, builds the 3rd lab, takes the scientific method in the urban growth. We see here the consequence of my decision of not seeding the inhabited territory, only because of having the ability to increase his population. He was able to go for the 3rd lab, and only because of that 3rd lab he now has the option to already get into scientific methods at the next turn. So it's really snowballing here, the benefits that he is getting out of that additional population. And at this point I was really asking myself if maybe I should have just pushed the inhabited territory, but that again might have backfired quite heavily later on in the game. Now it is my turn again, and again it's a bit awkward, as I can't really push again, and I think there was some reason why I wanted to push this turn, but maybe I'm also remembering it incorrectly. But generally it would have been nice to push. Again, I was not willing to put a colony in there, especially with not knowing whether Arne goes for the Suez Canal or not. This turn, first of all, I will finish the Ocean Liner, use it, build a printing press, and then as said, I kinda need to make space in my hand, and the irrigation at least I will want to develop soon anyway. There's no government form in the row yet anyway, and with that I was willing to spend a civil action already developing that. And yeah, so with that that was my turn. I think that was a relatively straightforward one. Now from now on I will get a lot of population, maybe can build some more printing presses soon, and as soon as I get an opera I have a lot of culture potential with Shakespeare. I keep the 2 colonies. I definitely don't want to push Ravages of Time in. I try even some more colonies. At least I know now that Arne doesn't have access to that many H2 colonies, and then I also draw the international negotiations. At the moment I'm the strength lead, but with going for Shakespeare it is also a bit awkward putting that event into the deck. I was now a bit worried that maybe the event deck is moving that slow that I might not open those strength events in time that I put in there. So I was hoping that Arne would maybe start pushing now, even though that would also mean that he only loses 2 food to the reds. Arne seeds, the reds are revealed. And no, then Arne at his turn will first of all take the Suez Canal, take the cannons, take the breakthrough, and then I just need to quickly check one thing because I felt like I'm missing out on something that I forgot. But I think I forgot about that. Forget about that. Alright, Arne is taking the breakthrough here, taking the Suez Canal interestingly. He has no colony yet, a big indicator that he is expecting to win a colony soon, meaning that one H1 event that he put in there is very likely a colony and probably has also a strong H2 colony in hand, even though as you can see I have quite a bunch of them available, so I was interested to see what he will choose to get with the Suez Canal. He then builds the step, and as you can see, he has also some corruption here. Wasn't really nicely able to get out of corruption. Now it is my turn. I again didn't like it too much to put any of those events in there. I thought international negotiations, maybe there's a chance that I will still be stronger, and I just wanted to push now, having a chance to get some strength events out. I push. And the inhabited territory 1 is revealed, which means that there is indeed a colony seeded by Arne. I was actually willing to bid quite a lot. An army plus my colonization card would be a bit costly, but I also just wanted to make sure that Arne has to pay a price here. I was very confident that he would bid more than 7 with his cartography, and ideally I wanted to make sure that he has to send an army and not only a warrior, and that I also achieved, which I was happy about. So he is getting a bit lower in strength here. I can then use the ocean liner service again to get more population out. And again I have some hand space issues this turn, because I don't really want to elect Shakespeare yet necessarily. Shishka is still giving me 3 culture per turn, is making myself a bit threatening, which could at least limit the options of Arne. And Shakespeare at the moment isn't really doing anything. So ideally I would like to keep Ian Shishka. I thought about building an additional printing press. The problem is then I really don't have a good solution for my hand space issues apart from electing Shakespeare. And with that I decided to play the turn differently and not commit the worker to printing presses, so that I have that worker available for the military, which allows me to now finally use the patriotism. I first take a copy of reserves. Now already I have a full hand. I play the patriotism, build a warrior. At least as soon as I switch to Shakespeare, that warrior will be very much needed, so I at least felt not too bad about committing that population there. And then I again have a full hand, but at least I can use one civil action to upgrade a farm already. Something that I at least need to do at some point. So I don't really need the +1 food at the moment, but at some point I need this upgrade to avoid famine, so at least I have civil action already out of the way that I will need at some point later on in the game. And the 1 food could actually still be relevant, because if I should stay stronger, then there's a chance that the foray might be revealed before my next turn, and then the 1 food gives me the option to actually take 3 food out of the fray and get an additional population immediately. And while you could argue that with the ocean liner service I might need the resources more, I think with having Shakespeare every additional population could be valuable, and with that I actually felt quite fine about this turn, instead of going for a printing press, going for that upgrade and then being able to take both copies of reserves. Of course there's also a Republic on the row. I still need a government form. I could just take it, but it's late. There's still the Conmon. Arne, if he takes it, maybe it would make his turn at least a bit awkward. So I was not willing to take it for 3 here, and rather wanted to have those reserves with the Conmon still coming and it being late in the age. I draw 3 cards here. The Crime Wave, Developed Territory 2, so another colony, and the Arms Industry. There are only 2 leaders left for Arne actually. One of them is in the row, the other is Robespierre, which Arne at this point doesn't really need. So at this point I also knew that Arne might go for Napoleon, which of course could push him into a more military heavy direction. So I was interested to see what he will be doing. First he will seed, the raiders are revealed, costing him a bit of either resources or food. He will decide to pay 2 food. He is going for the architecture, can finish the Suez Canal. Even he gets the vast territory 1, which I was happy to see. I mean, it's still strong for him. He got now 5 additional yellows. He will now have a very healthy amount of population to work with, but still an H2 colony maybe would have been more interesting for him, but at this point I have already drawn 5 out of those, so there would not be that many left for him. But he could have had vast territory 2 at least, for example, so I was happy to see that it's actually only an H1 colony that he is colonizing here. He then takes Napoleon, and with his last 2 civil actions, after electing him, because the age might end before his next turn, he is actually going for the scientific method, which he has just enough science to go into, and he is then able to upgrade a lab, going up to 5 science. He is actually using the urban growth, an indicator that he is now planning to build a knight to get out of corruption, and is at least at 14 strength. So that looks like a very clean turn. He gets the architecture, which helps him immediately on the Suez Canal and on the scientific methods. He will have a strong economy. He will have very many population to work with. So he is definitely transitioning into something nice and interesting here. But still, I have Shakespeare, I have already a bit of a culture lead, and Arne also has only 5 civil actions, which at some point could be a bit limiting. But if he has a good tactic to work with, especially maybe the mobile artillery, then also it could be get quite a bit threatening for me, and I have to be careful about that. And now it is my turn. I know that the foray is on top. I have an event that is fine to see it, at least the arms industry. The moment it would give both of us 4 additional resources, and with that I push the arms industry, also maybe with me needing the resources more now that Arne has the Suez Canal going, and the foray is revealed, which I was happy to get, and indeed I will make use out of that 1 food, take 3 food now from the foray and use that to increase my population this turn, additional time. And this turn I had a big decision to make, and that decision was about the government form that I'm going for. Because Arne didn't deny the Republic, a thing that we discussed about later after the game, if maybe that could have been an option for him, and maybe it could have been only for 1 civil action, and I will actually go for the Republic, but it was a very close decision for me if I should go for Republic or Conmon here, and Arne couldn't have gone for the scientific method upgrade, costing him some value immediately. He's slow in civil actions, doesn't have the most hand space. I do think it was a fine decision by him to let me have this Republic, especially if he has a good tactic in hand and maybe plans on putting some military pressure on me, then I could even be having some issues when I go into Republic now, and that was also the reason why I really thought about going into Conmon here. Being on 4 instead of only 2 military actions could just be a lot smoother to play, to defend myself, drawing some impacts. And the turn that I would choose when I go for the Conmon would be to build a warrior, using Shishka's military action, electing Shakespeare to make space in my hand, taking and developing the constitutional monarchy, increasing my population, which together with building the warrior would be enough to get me out of corruption, and then with the last civil action I would take the opera for Shakespeare. Then I would have the Conmon going, I would have Shakespeare elected, I would have actually a 3rd warrior, so I would remain the strongest also for now. The big issue being that I'm missing 1 science to get into opera at the next turn. And in case Arne isn't going for immediate military pressure, that would just be a lot of value to miss out on. Even if he is going for some military pressure, it could still be strong, just setting up some culture production and then afterwards just doing my best to defend and then just pulling quickly away with the culture, maybe even being able to absorb 1 war over culture or something. And I just didn't like it at all that I don't have enough science, but there isn't also really a turn that fixes that where I can go for the constitutional monarchy. Additionally, I then also have some happy face issues despite having Shakespeare. I can't really go for another printing press, and it just felt limiting. I then thought about taking and finishing the Eiffel Tower at the next turn, which could be fine, but a card like Revolutionary Idea I was thinking could be very important to take. I might still want to have a copy of Cannons. It just didn't work out that nicely, and with that I at the end was actually willing to go for the Republic here. because not taking any government form, and I don't think it's really an option. The Republic, of course, means I am stuck on 2 military actions. Arne has Napoleon. I was very much worried, but at least the civil actions will also be helpful for me in some way to defend myself. I can take more yellow cards, and at least there is still a copy of strategy. I was hoping that Arne, with his big economy, with having some issues to get out of corruption, it's not that easily possible for him to take either strategy or revolutionary idea. Both would be costly, so either he's paying a price, or if not, I can maybe take a revolutionary idea together with strategy and then have a way to get more military actions. If the strategy is taken away, of course, then I kind of need to hope that I get a solution for the military actions in H3. So I use the ocean liner service, I build a warrior, I will go for Shakespeare, I go for the Republic, and the Republic being 1 science cheaper already allows me to get into opera at the next turn, which is important because I at the end was not willing to build another printing press here. I didn't want to commit the population yet, and instead I, after taking the wave of nationalism, also took the team sports. The wave will definitely be useful in case Arne goes for some military pressure. I thought about that maybe the revolutionary idea is the more important card for me to take. But as said, I think in Arne's position it would be quite a costly take with him not having the most civil actions, and also he might want to deny strategy, so I was thinking that I can just take the revolutionary idea at the next turn, and then the wave is just also quite a useful card that I can now take for cheaper, and the team sports also could be interesting to have, because if I don't get Chaplain, I might still need some additional happy faces at some point, and there's also Pierre in the game. Just keeping Shakespeare for long and then getting Pierre at the end of H3 could be a very nice plan, so I kind of wanted to have those team sports in hand. And then at the next turn I have enough science to get into operas, maybe get a lot of culture production going. I still have a small culture lead at the moment, and hopefully that will become quite a bit bigger over the next turns. I keep the crime wave and the autonomous territory, I draw the refugees and the economic progress. H3 starts now. Arne seeds, and there's actually another colony in revealed, the historic territory 2. And I was taking the risk here of letting Arne pay a little bit more, because I'm bidding 8, which would mean an army plus another knight. A price that I don't really want to pay, but it's a strong colony, it's a big culture swing, Arne has the Suez Canal, and I was very much hoping that Arne would. I just wanted to make sure that Arne has to send an army, and I was very sure that he would send an army, and with that I just was willing to push the price that much, even though of course it can potentially backfire. But it worked, Arne has again to send another army away. However, him winning that colony also means that out of the sudden he is already quite close again, it's quite near in culture to me again. This turn he will increase his population 2 times, builds a warrior, builds a knight, that just gets him out of corruption, also makes him a bit stronger again, and then he is willing to deny the strategy here. He's of course able to use it himself, getting more strength going, but also he is denying it from me, and I definitely have to be careful about my military here, as that could definitely be dangerous soon. And yeah, I was interested to see if Arne will indeed go for a military push, and if he maybe has drawn a good tactic for that. The good news being, Arne didn't get stronger for now, even though having Napoleon, and I have actually now 3 armies even without Shishka ongoing, meaning I'm the strongest. I know that the international negotiations are in there, and with that I was willing to push here. I again had to think about which one do I want to push, and at the end I decided to push the crime wave just because it's not the most influential event. Maybe I could also just push economic progress, but I have the ocean liner, Arne has more resource production, there's Bill Gates, and it's just not that clear how strong that event will be for me. So I rather push the crime wave here, hoping that I would hit a strength event here, maybe the international negotiations that I put into the deck. I seeded a crime wave, and I was not happy to see what I revealed here. It's actually a very early iconoclasm in H3 here. I lose Shakespeare immediately. Arne loses Napoleon, which costs him quite a bit of the military pressure that he maybe could have had. But still, I was not happy to see that iconoclasm, especially that early, especially this turn, because I have some issues now. With if I would have been able to keep Shakespeare, then this turn would have been relatively easy. I would have just built 2 operas, I would have started lots of culture production, I would have been able to use the discounts on the opera for developing and building 2 of them. I would have taken the revolutionary ideal, maybe the cannons. It would have been just a relatively clean turn for me. But now not only lose I the ability to go for operas this turn, I will also lose the discounts in case I will choose to go for them later on in the future. But with me losing Shakespeare now immediately this turn, I actually also have a happy face issue with losing the happy face from Shakespeare. I have not enough science to get into team sports. I either have to delete something, or I go into organized religion, which would both be awkward options, or what is, I think, by far the least awkward option, and potentially even a strong option, especially now that Shakespeare is gone, or I take and finish the Eiffel Tower. And I think that is kind of a thing that I really need to do here. At least it makes sure that I increase my culture production. I don't have to disband anything, I don't have to invest science into any happy face solution, and I find a way to spend my resources. And then with 2 civil actions left, I can still take the revolutionary idea. Breakthrough sometimes being the more efficient card, but I think here it was more important to get the science up front. I don't take the cannons, rockets on the row. Arne could deny them from me, but it would be costly for him, and I don't know at the moment if I even need those cannons, so I was willing to pass on them. No, but losing Shakespeare here, I think, cost me quite a bit of value, and I was especially unhappy because, as you can see, there's an early Bill Gates coming down the row, and also Steve Jobs, meaning Arne can immediately get a replacement leader, while I don't know when will I get Chaplin or maybe Gandhi to hide behind, or potentially Pierre with the team sports. I don't know when I will be getting those. So at this point, also with the historic territory having been revealed, and Arne actually being very close in culture, him having 9 resource production now, getting Bill Gates, I'm not having Shakespeare any longer. I just thought that the game is about to slip out of my hands here. I keep the refugees and the economic progress. I draw 2 impacts. Impact of science maybe won't work, but impact of variety could at least be a seedable one. Arne will go for the cannons this turn. At the turn before, he was missing a science to get into cannons, meaning he rebuilt a warrior, but we will see that he only did that to maybe get out of corruption and get a bit stronger. He will now reveal the cannons and actually is going for 2 of them already. Is then taking Bill Gates, but only taking him in hand. So he is really putting some effort into getting stronger, which is interesting because he has actually only knowledge about 1 of the events from the remaining 3. Of course, he could suspect some strength events from myself. I had Jan Schuschka for a while, but I also knew for a while that I would get into Shakespeare. Meaning that Arne prioritizing the military build-up over electing Bill Gates and getting some economical value could be a big sign that maybe he himself has actually pushed a strength event. And no, but next turn he will be able to elect Bill Gates, and he will then have a lot of resources to work with. At least Chaplin is coming down the row, which could be a leader that I maybe could use. I, at my turn, of course, had to ask myself if I would be willing to cede here. And it's a close call. I could just not be ceding because I will be... I will actually get stronger this turn. And I know that the international negotiations are in there, and also Arne did somewhat indicate that he might also have pushed a strength event in there. Nonetheless, I have a lot of seedable cards, so maybe just getting some culture income by seeding those cards could be interesting. If I don't hit a strength event and then get stronger with me having been willing to seed at the weakest, maybe Arne is not that much afraid any longer that I could have pushed any strength events, meaning that maybe he would then seed into one, because if the strength race continues here, I might end up being weakest anyway, and if I should reveal the international negotiations at one of my turns, when I maybe just keep pushing now, at least I can decide what I will pay to Arne, because paying science I think would be quite painful for me here. Resources of course also bad, but with having the reserves and the wave of nationalisms somewhat endurable, and with that I was willing to push, and I pushed the impact of variety into the deck. And I was not happy to see that Cold War here. That was of course now a risk that I took with seeding. Yeah, but Arne gets the 6 additional science, which would have been very helpful for me, and I think is also quite helpful for him. There's actually a democracy coming down the road, which he now a lot more easily might be able to go for. So I was a bit unhappy about the event order. Of course, it would have been better for me hitting the Cold War while I was strongest the turn before, and then Shakespeare maybe being able to keep him a bit longer. But it is what it is now, and now I have to see how I will want to best continue the game. I certainly think I need to take the military theory here. I was happy that I have the chance to take it. The question is, am I willing to invest into the military theory? And at the end, I came to the conclusion that I am indeed willing to invest into that, but it's still a tough call because it means that I also at the next turn can't go for operas. At least thanks to the Eiffel Tower, I already have again a stronger culture production, meaning I will increase my culture lead by a little bit, and I at least can make sure to get the operas in 2 turns when I maybe at the next turn either build a printing press or maybe get a copy of Revolutionary Idea. And so hopefully I at least will only delay the operas by 1 more turn. I could have of course gone for operas this turn, but then I wouldn't be able to develop the military theory at the next turn, which I think could perhaps have some very bad consequences. If Arne has a war, he can declare it, develop the strategy, go for 2 more units. But so I go for the military theory. At least it means that I draw more cards. If I maybe because of that draw some additional impacts, then that also could in a way generate maybe me some additional culture. Now I have 3 civil actions left, but I actually have only 1 hand space left. And I can't really develop a technology. I could play the reserves, which might cause corruption. I could then build a printing press, but that wouldn't solve corruption. I could then build a religion, which I will actually do this turn, to get out of corruption, to then maybe, but actually not. If I play the reserves and then build something, I have only 1 civil action left anyway, so the only option for me to take 2 cards would be to play the reserves, have corruption, take 2 cards, which I was not willing to do. Instead, I will actually already build a printing press this turn, getting more science and culture reduction. I will then build a religion, and I will take the reserves. The breakthrough, of course, could have been an interesting technology for me as well, but I felt like having even more resources could end up being even more important. I won't take the rockets here, which is of course an interesting call, but I don't have a lot of science. I would need, even if I go for 2 rockets, I still only have 10 from the tactic instead of the 9 that I'm having at the moment, and instead I could build more of those armies. There's Manhattan Project coming down the road, which I thought could be an interesting option, so I just felt like taking the rockets over one of those yellows is not really the way to go here. But I'm stronger now again. I was hoping that at least with me being willing to seed as the weakest, Arne might be willing to seed now himself, so maybe there's a chance that I at least win the international negotiations now. I draw some cards. Impact of Architecture might end up being not that great against Bill Gates. Arne at his turn doesn't see it. He will instead go for a war over technology. So let's see what he is able to do. As said, he can go for the strategy. He will now also elect Bill Gates. Can at least only increase his population 1 time, is missing 1 food to increase it 2 times, meaning at least he has to destroy one of those labs. Builds a knight, goes for an upgrade. Maybe could have even destroyed a mine here to have that lab to upgrade for later on, which maybe he wants to go for more labs with Bill Gates anyway, but of course if he doesn't, then it could end up being a bit bad. But he has that many resources that he could have some trouble spending all of them anyway. Yeah, for now he wants to keep the iron mine, and with that, with going for the upgrade, is able to get out of corruption, has now 4 additional resource production thanks to Bill Gates, and is at 35 strength, so is quite threatening. Now it is my turn, and here I quickly came to the conclusion that probably I need to risk pushing here. I of course first thought about how a defense turn would look like if I don't push, and I could do some stuff. I could play the wave, I could go for chaplain, I have 2 population to work with, meaning I can already build another army, and potentially I could even destroy 2 labs, for example, build another army, and then I would actually tie Arne in the war. But I would also need to destroy a lot, my economy wouldn't be in the best shape, I would have a lot of workers committed in those armies, and also with that play I wouldn't have enough civil actions left to take the Manhattan Project, which I felt like would be an important way to have to get more strength to avoid potential upcoming wars. And the thing is, out of those two events, one is international negotiations, the other one is arms industry, which would give me 4 resources. And those 4 resources would allow me to take Manhattan Project, play one of the reserves, and finish it. That would be my whole turn. At the moment, I'm missing 1 resource, if I play the reserves 3, to go for the turn. Maybe a mistake on my side, building that religion at the turn before. By the way, I didn't talk a lot about building this religion, it's just giving me a bit of culture, and I might need it at some point anyway for the impact of variety, and I just didn't have anything else to do with that civil action. But now I have invested some resources. If I wouldn't have invested those, I could have gone for the Manhattan Project now, but I also didn't know that Arne has a war, and I knew that arms industry, that there is a chance to reveal it. But now I felt like I kind of need to gamble to reveal it, because that would just be so much cleaner, that Manhattan Project turn. I would actually win the war by 1 strength, not allowing Arne to take any signs, and I have the Manhattan Project available for potential later wars. And yeah, the thing of course being, if I don't hit the arms industry here when I see it, then the international negotiations will be revealed, meaning that I either have to spend 3 signs or 3 resources and give them to Arne, which both is kind of really needed for me. But nonetheless, I think paying the 3 resources is actually not that bad as it seems at first, because I came to the conclusion that if I don't hit the arms industry, I will actually only go for 1 army to defend myself, give a lot of signs to Arne, and take the Manhattan Project. And if I go for the turn, I would have some corruption anyway. At least if I use the wave, I could also use the reserves, but I then don't know when I will have the next chance to use the wave of nationalism. So if I use the wave, I would have corruption, but if I pay the 3 resources, I don't have corruption, meaning it isn't too bad for me to pay the 3 resources, and Arne maybe has a surplus amount of resources anyway, or has enough already anyway. And now, with the potential of me being able to finish Manhattan Project just being so good for me, I just decided I need to take that 50-50 chance here. See that the economic progress, it wasn't an easy decision, because all of the cards that I have available to push, sadly, like in some turns before, aren't that great for me. Both of the impacts will probably end up being bad. Refugees could end up being very bad. Economic progress seemed to be bad, but I felt like it could actually end up being fine, because Arne doesn't have the most blue tokens, has lost one with the vast territory, has more than enough resource anyways. Low in civil actions, could have some difficulties spending all of his resources anyway, could maybe be that deep in his out of blue tokens that he can't get that much out of it anyway, while every additional resource that I might get could really help me. Maybe Arne is going for a war later on and the economic progress might be revealed at my turn, so I felt like economic progress could actually be a very fine event to push. And now, of course, I was very interested to see what will I reveal. It could be a very deciding moment if I will be able to finish the Manhattan Project this turn or not. And sadly, I don't hit the right event here. The international negotiations are revealed, meaning I have to pay some stuff. I will pay the resource. I thought about the signs, but the resource just seemed better at the end. At this point, I was a little bit unhappy about the event order here. First the iconoclasm instead of a strength event, and the arms industry now when I need it is sadly the last event. But I have to work with that now, and with that in order to get some more strength, I will need to build some units. I play the wave, I go for Chaplain, I will elect him, and with that I have those workers as free population. If I would have hit the resources, I wouldn't have gone for Chaplain, which could have had some advantages, because it would leave myself open towards Gandhi, and also Pierre could still be interesting. Chaplain, but now I need the happy face from Chaplain, so I can't really leave myself open for Gandhi. And also Arne can go for fundamentalism at his next turn if he wants to. As you can see, I can easily go for another army now, thanks to freeing up the 2 population, putting me 29 strength. Now the big question being, am I willing to destroy 2 labs or 2 things? Probably labs are best, in order to go for another army and tie with Arne in strength. But then I'm at 35. I am heavily committed on those, I have a lot of those armies, and Arne, if he gets just a copy of Air Force, can go for more strength, and in case of a war, in a potential second war at some point, my strength then could be a lot less. It's a tough call, but here I decided to actually just go for the Manhattan project and being able to finish that at the next turn. I'm not sure if it is the right decision, because giving Arne the 6 science, at least he can't take the military theory away, achieving that was very important. Arne could takes now 6 science away from me, and that science will allow him now to get into a government form immediately. He hasn't drawn that many H3 cards yet, meaning it's definitely possible he doesn't have an H3 war yet, but now with having the ability to just quickly get into democracy, maybe even take the space flight immediately, he could just get such a big boost that out of the sudden he also could have the advantage in a peaceful game. But on the other hand, I'm running a little bit away with the culture. If he's going for a peaceful game, then at the next turn I could start going for operas, for example, or in 2 turns at least. So I was hoping that maybe in a peaceful game I could still have chances, and if it will end up being a military heavy game, of course the 6 additional science also will now be useful for Arne, could maybe help him getting into fundamentalism. But then I think the Manhattan project could just be very important to at least have some ways to defend against a potential second war. Also, it means that I will draw more cards now, making the chance to draw more impacts, and the one card that I draw thanks to the 2 additional draws, the Impact of Industry, is actually quite interesting. It's a neutral one at the moment, but Arne might need to destroy some things at some point, and the iron mines could definitely be a thing that he will destroy first. As you can see, I am actually not able to defend against an aggression, which could have been, of course, a reason to go for another army, but it is very likely that I can defend, and Arne might not be willing to try it. If he has only aggressions, he could do it, but when I ended my turn, I also still had a chance of drawing a defense card, and now at least my colony bits earlier on could be coming in handy, especially for the historic territory 2. There it definitely looked like I might have an H2 colonization card available. Sending an army and an H2 colonization card maybe seems like the more reasonable bit than sending an army and a knight, and I still have one H2 card in hand, so I was hoping that Arne won't go for an aggression here, but sadly I don't have any colonization cards, so if he would be going for an aggression, I would not be able to defend here. Arne steals 6 science from me. I was really hoping to not get hit by an aggression, and that would feel quite a bit annoying. And luckily Arne doesn't go for an aggression. It would be interesting to know if he's maybe watching if he had an aggression available. I mean, I think it probably should be the right decision to push here, but still it would be interesting to know. The arms industry is opened now, at least with me paying resources to Arne, and that was also another reason why I wanted to pay resources to him. He only gets 2 resources out of the event, I gained 4, so that event ended up being quite nice for me, even though of course I would have preferred to see it a bit earlier. Arne this turn, after getting the science, will indeed go for the democracy. Him going for democracy and not fundamentalism is a little bit of a hint that probably he doesn't have a war yet in hand, and he doesn't have that much time left to draw one, so I had some hopes here that maybe he doesn't go for a war or won't be able to go for a war. On the other hand, he will be able to go for the space flight, gets a big Bill Gates bonus, might be able to build up, work towards some impact, so I was still worried about his position. Also, we can see here that now he did actually destroy a mine in order to build an additional lab. So maybe in hindsight it could have been better to destroy that mine already earlier on and keep the lab, which he now would have been able to upgrade. But of course it could have happened that he didn't need to destroy a mine in the near future, or that he wouldn't have built an additional lab. Now it's my turn. I could push, and just trying to get as much culture out of pushing could be good. The problem being that I will be better prepared for both of the events that I have seeded, and those are the next 2 that will be revealed. Both of them will be better for me after my turn. Both of them would actually cost me some culture if I would reveal them. The one being the crime wave, and I will get stronger because I will build a Manhattan project. The other one being the economic progress, which at the moment would cost me 4 culture to famine, and I will be able to prepare for both of those events, and with that I didn't want to push. I use the ocean liner service here, get another population going. I will first of all fix my famine. I will go for another printing press, which I think is something very important to get. First of all, I will now finish the Manhattan project, just overtaking Arne's strength again, giving me the chance to maybe win the crime wave, and also having that wonder out of the way to maybe at least threaten to take the Empire State Building away, which could limit a little bit on Arne's option, on what wonder he's planning for. And maybe there's even a chance that I could still finish the Empire State Building for myself, maybe with having the most culture income, and maybe I could build an additional farm or something, or maybe just keep the strength lead with the Manhattan project. And so I gain an additional point for the Manhattan project, but the main reason to build that printing press is that I then at the next turn have enough science to get into opera, so that in case the game remains somewhat peaceful, I have the chance to get a significant increase in culture production. So I built this printing press, I finished the Manhattan project for 5 culture at least, that's at least something, and then I have 2 civil actions left, which I do use to take the reserves. It's not completely clear if I should take the reserves here, because if Arne goes for a military push now, it could definitely be worthwhile maybe taking the air forces away, maybe even taking the fundamentalism in hand, which I could do a revolution towards. But especially taking the air force away, there's of course a second copy, but if that isn't revealed in time, I have a somewhat decent defense at least. With now having the Manhattan project, I'm at the moment 8 strength ahead. I have some reserves, I can just build some more armies, I can have a bunch of stuff that I could disband potentially. So without air forces, Arne might not be able to go for one, so it could be worthwhile denying that and hoping that the next copy will be late. But yeah, it might still be available in time. Arne doesn't need to declare a war at the next turn, he can still build up one more turn, and then there's just a good chance that the air forces will be available in time and he has enough civil actions to maybe take and develop the air forces at the turn when he is actually declaring the war, and the reserves could be a very helpful card for me to just also have an even higher strength potential, or just build more stuff in case the game will end up being peaceful. Thanks to my bigger culture reduction and also actually to the 5 culture of the Manhattan project, I have now almost already a 30 culture lead, but of course we shouldn't forget that Arne will get the Bill Gates bonus, so with that it's rather somewhat like a 20 culture lead. I get some draws here, no new impacts, but wars and aggressions, giving me some hope that maybe Arne's chances of drawing a war haven't been that high with the amount of draws that he had. But I mean, at this point he had some draws, so let's see what his next turn will look like, if it will look like war preparation or rather preparing for something peaceful. He is starting by taking the space flight, however, he has enough resources to probably pull off a war and still finish the space flight, and sadly, as you can see, he's building one air force, he's even building another air force, making use out of his military actions, but also still making sure to draw 3 cards, so I do think this turn could also make sense if he isn't knowing whether he gets a war. He didn't push. On one hand, it means that sadly now I'm in danger of getting hit by the grain wave again, but I think I should more see the positive out of this for me, because that meant that Arne just, skipped one politics action, and with him maybe wanting to set up for some strong impacts, that I think is very good news for me. But the war could now be really a problem for me. And I don't have a clear way how I can nicely prepare for that, especially, I mean, I will start by seeding the impact of industry. I just wanted to start getting some impacts in there now, and impact of industry should be fine. The event revealed is the economic progress, which ends up being a fine event. The 6 resource probably being a lot more valuable for me than for Arne. However, the 2 food actually are quite valuable for Arne, because before the economic progress he wasn't able to increase his population. Now sadly he is. I could just develop the rifleman, start building up a lot of strength. But I felt like with Arne getting the Bill Gates bonus, the spaceflight, potentially some strong impacts, I need to take some gambles here. And also, my strength potential is not that much higher if I commit to Rifleman already this turn. And so I mean, it's a bit higher, but I instead went for the Opera, built one, going up to 15 culture reduction, and after that taking the Patriotism. First I thought I want to take the military build-up, but then I came to the conclusion that the Revolutionary Idea is the more important card to take, because with all of those reserves and the Patriotism, I should not have a resource shortage, but of course my strength potential is just a lot higher if I can go for Rifleman. Actually not really. It is an easier way to get more strength, but if I'm just willing to recklessly destroy a lot of stuff, then actually my best defense could be to go for just a bunch of more armies. Potentially I could play the Patriotism, get one population with the Ocean Liner, unless Arne ends the age, which is a real danger, but it would be a bit costly for him. I could play the Patriotism. Let's see if I remember that correctly. Yes, then I have 16 resources, 6 military actions, and I could destroy 6 things, which would be extremely costly, but I could then build 3 more armies. Each army gives me 6 strength, meaning I could go up to 60, which is not enough if Arne goes for a war with air forces, but at least something, and I have a culture lead. But Arne could probably still finish the space flight. Definitely he could, and I would be a lot worse prepared for impacts. So I was thinking that if Arne has a war, things are not looking that great for me. I have a big culture lead, I might still have some chances, but with him getting spaceflight and maybe also some impacts, I would maybe need a very strong impact for my own, like potentially harmony or population, or culture. So I might need that in case Arne has a war, but I was hoping that maybe there could be a chance that Arne doesn't have a war, and if the game stays peaceful, then at that point I have that big of a lead that even with Arne getting a strong wonder and maybe having some impacts in the Brigades bonus, it could still look relatively good for me at least. So now and with my last civil action I will play the reserves too before I will potentially lose them to the end of the age. And then I was of course very interested to see what Arne will do at his next politics phase. And for my strength potential, of course, now with the Revolutionary, I can also go for the Rifleman, go for less armies, but maybe just being able to upgrade some warriors. With the Revolutionary, I could also potentially go into tanks, modern infantry, so it just gives me some options. Arne will not go for a war, meaning he very likely doesn't have one. He also told me after the game that he didn't have one, meaning maybe I could actually get away with having been militarily somewhat vulnerable over some turns now. And yeah, the crime wave is revealed. I will sadly lose some culture. Let's see what Arne can do. He can still also do some good peaceful stuff. He is starting to go for movies, goes for another movie, takes the engineering genius at the next turn, has enough resource to go even for another movie, finish the space flight, and depending on what technologies I leave to him, he could go for 2 more techs, making a relatively big space flight, having a strong Bill Gates bonus, and potentially some strong impact. So even without a war, Arne is definitely in the game here. At my turn, I didn't really want to push any of those cards. I could push the refugees, but if then Arne seeds and I draw a good impact, that could end up being very annoying. So I rather decided against getting those 2 culture from the refugees. And yeah, I will increase my population with the Ocean Liner service. The game will now end. I know that there can't be any more wars, so now it's just trying to maximize the amount of culture that I will be getting. And one big question for me this turn was whether to go into movies or satellites. My first idea was satellites, because I know that the impact of variety is coming and it immediately gives me +2 culture for that impact, and also in case impact of progress is in there, it could be strong. Additionally, the 3 strength from the satellites make it that with having the 1 defense card, I can defend against an aggression, while when I don't go for satellites and don't increase my strength in another way, then I need another defense card in order to be able to defend against an aggression. And with that, I felt like going for satellites might be nice. However, I then calculated how much culture I would get by already deploying movies this turn and generally having the movies available, because with the satellites plan I was not really able to take endowment, revolutionary idea and movies in hand, meaning I won't be able to get the movies, and having movies already this turn and at the next turn just generates me an amount of culture that I just felt I need to go for the movies. If I might get hit by an aggression, it could be bad, but even then, I mean, then the satellites play might be better, but I can at the end of the turn also name some reasons why an aggression maybe could be fine. First of all, Arne might have some different options here. There are so many impacts that are at least somewhat good for him, that going for an aggression likely comes at a cost of at least going for somewhat seedable impact, unless he has been very unlucky. Meaning that even if I get hit by armed intervention, it might still only be it's a 14 culture swing, but he might have had an impact that maybe gives him +3, and then with 3 culture for seeding, it's not that much worse. And already I generate quite a lot of an additional amount of culture thanks to the movies this turn and then also at the next turn. And I think the armed dimension might even be the worst impact, because something like plunder, raid, occupy might be annoying, especially a raid, but I only lose 1 movie, I can rebuild it, and that could be somewhat fine. So, of course, Arne could have only an aggression in hand, no nice impact at all. That would be unlucky for him. But even then, there is an armed intervention, which I felt like would be the worst aggression at this point. Then the armed intervention could make it a lot more likely that I will be able to play the endowment for 6 culture at my next turn, because at the moment I thought if there is no armed intervention, of course it depends then on what impacts will be revealed, but I thought that there is definitely a chance that I will start my turn, especially if I find an impact to seed, with more culture than Arne has after his turn. He of course gets the Bill Gates bonus, some good impacts, but if an armed intervention hits me, at least it's a lot more likely that I can play the endowment, and maybe he would play it at a cost of not being able to go for an impact. That could be seedable for him. And if he has a strong impact, he is maybe going for that impact anyway instead of an aggression. So I just wanted to maximize my culture potential here. I was really hoping to maybe get a nice draw, and I do get a nice draw. The impact of population is quite strong for me. It will give me +8 against Arne, and then also 3 for seeding. I was extremely happy about the draw, and with that I was also more confident about my abilities to win the game. But I didn't draw a defense card, meaning that Arne goes for an aggression. He would be able to succeed in one. H4 starts, and Arne indeed goes for the armed intervention, which is of course still now a bit bad. And yeah, it's a 14 culture swing, so not ideal for me. Arne goes for an interesting turn here that somewhat reveals at least 1 maybe of the impacts that he has seeded, or at least hints at 2 potentially impacts that he could have seeded. He is going for the civil service, and he is going for the civil service at the cost of developing 2 technologies, which he could have done in addition to building a movie, if he wouldn't have gone for the civil service. And that is of course a big hint to impact of progress, but probably even more to impact of government, because for impact of progress he could have gone for satellites. He has the cartography, but it still would now only be 2 more. So either there's impact of progress and government, or the impact of government in there. Otherwise that civil service play would seem a little bit weird. Arne can finish the space flight for 24 points. He destroys a farm and builds an additional movie. Destroying the farm is a very big indicator that something like impact of balance isn't in there, and I have drawn the impact of agriculture myself. Before I drew that and before I saw the turn from Arne, I was afraid that Arne might go for a turn with developing satellites, mechanized agriculture, upgrading 2 farms, finishing the space flight, and then he would have a very strong impact of balance in agriculture. But it seems like he didn't have access to those impacts, and the impact of agriculture I've just drawn. With Arne disbanding a farm, it could have been actually also an idea to seed the impact of agriculture this turn. And first I even thought it's almost completely equal, because I thought I will definitely build a 3rd farm with playing the reserves, and then I thought about, at the end of my turn still had 2 resources left. I thought about building an additional mine for the impact of industry, but I thought I can also just build a farm and put the impact of agriculture in there, which then would even give me 1 more. But I wouldn't prepare for the impact of industry, so I thought it's exactly the same. However, after thinking more about my turn, I came to the conclusion that it is better to not see the impact of agriculture into the deck and to actually not build an additional farm, And especially now with knowing that both Impact of Balance and Agriculture are not in there, I can also play the reserves for food, which will allow me one thing that we can now take a look at during my turn. First, I will see the Impact of Population, and indeed the Impact of Government is revealed, giving Arne +6 against me. Strong impact, but Arne needs some strong impacts now in order to win the game. The question if that impact is strong enough. I can play the Endowment. Before that I was at 129. Without the armed intervention, I mean, then the Impact of Variety might have been revealed as well, which at the moment is actually better. I think too better for Arne. So without the armed intervention, I think I indeed wouldn't have been able to play the Endowment. I think so. With that, the armed intervention was indeed not as bad as it maybe looks. I can now play the Endowment for 6 culture. I play the reserves for resources. Play 1 reserves for food. My first idea was to just play both the resources. I have a lot of warriors that I can delete. Impact of Harmony isn't good at all for Arne. I can just disband a bunch of warriors. I'm weaker anyway. And then instead of playing the reserves for food to get out of famine, just build an additional farm. But I also basically know that for the impacts it doesn't really make a difference, and not disbanding that many warriors will at least help me in one thing, because now I can disband 1 warrior to build a movie, another warrior to build a mine for Impact of Industry, and now I have still 1 warrior left, meaning I can play the Patriotism, maneuver that warrior, another warrior, into knights. But I still have a warrior left. If I would have now built an additional farm, I also would have disbanded that warrior, and that would have cost me 2 points for the Impact of Variety. But like this, I can keep a warrior, keep 2 points for the variety, while also improving my Impact of Competition for 1. It's of course not a lot, but still it's just strictly better than the other option, and with that I think that's my best turn. And with only 1 impact being left for Arne and me knowing the other 3, at this point it looked relatively good. It's still close because Arne gets the Bill Gates bonus, is only, with taking that into account, 9 culture behind me, but luckily I have drawn that Impact of Population, and with that it looks now relatively good for me. And the Impact of Population is also the impact that we see here first, giving me +8 against Arne. There is indeed the Impact of Competition, so my thoughts did pay off, and I gained 1 additional point for that impact. Arne is now coming a bit closer again. We then have the Impact of Variety, which at this point is even +2 for Arne, and the last impact also has been seeded by me. It's the Impact of Industry, which is a good one for me because Arne disbanded some of his mines, and the Bill Gates production doesn't count for the Impact of Industry. And even with the Bill Gates bonus, Arne ends up being 10 culture behind me. And with that, I'm able to win this game, and I think it was quite an interesting one. It was a tricky position for me. I tried at the early game with Sun Tzu to go for some military pressure, but the knights were relatively late. The second copy I got Shishka and knights, but Arne was able to defend, and I also didn't draw a lot of strength events. But then I got the Ocean Liner Service and Shakespeare, which was quite strong for me, but I was low in civil actions and science for a long time. I then had the Shakespeare set up, or almost had it, and was just about to get into Shakespeare and felt quite confident about the game, but Arne built up some strong production, won the historic territory, got closer in culture, and then Shakespeare got removed with the iconoclasm, and out of the sudden things were looking a bit dangerous. Then Arne put on some military pressure, even after losing Napoleon, had this war over technology. I was a bit unhappy about that event order, with the iconoclasm first and the arms industry last, which not allowed me to finish the Manhattan Project, giving Arne some signs. At this point I was thinking the game might be going into a bad direction, but then I was a bit lucky again, with Arne not having access to any wars. At some point turns during Age 3 I think he missed out on some draws, but at the end he still had an amount of draws, I think, that definitely it's not unreasonable that he draws a war. So I was then again lucky, because I think with a war, I mean, who knows if I somehow can do something, but I think Arne can go for the war and finish the space flight. Of course, he misses out on all of those movies, and those movies have produced him, I think, 20 culture. And I would at least be able to pull off a somewhat nice defense. So I think it's not 100% clear how that would play out, but I think it might be enough for Arne to win. And then also I drew the impact of population. Without that, if I wouldn't have any impact to seed, Arne will win the game because I got basically 3 for seeding plus 8. If I have a neutral impact to seed, it could still be enough. So at the end, with not getting hit by a war and withdrawing that impact, I then was again a bit lucky, and that at the end was enough to win this game. But no, it was quite an interesting one. It was quite tense playing the game. It was shifting a little bit in different directions, with at some point me being the one pressuring the military, and then Arne being the one setting up Shakespeare, losing Shakespeare. Arne out of the sudden having Bill Gates, which I was unhappy to see. So yeah, I think it was a game worth sharing, and of course I'm very happy that I was able to win this game. With that, we can also take a quick look at the standings, and the standings that we are looking at are the one before the final game, so every player has 1 game left to play. Alright, so here we can see the standings. Also, I just realized that the video is turning out to be quite long, especially for a 2-player game, so I hope I didn't get lost in some of my explanations. And hopefully it was just because it was a game with a lot of tough decisions. Alright, all players have 6 games finished. All players will be playing 1 more game. The top 2 players will be advancing to the Emperor's League, which is the top league. And the last 3 players will get relegated. With my win, I already made sure that I won't get relegated, which is nice. And now I have some hope still of getting the 2nd place and getting the promotion in. First of all, it is interesting that the top 2 players that are leading the table, Danny and Arne, will play against each other in the last game. So one of them will get a win and go up to 6 wins and 12 points. And in order for me to have chances for the 2nd position, I need to hope that Daniel will win this game, because if Daniel loses the game, it's a 10 points and I win my last game, which will be against Desi. If I win that game, I'm tied with Daniel, but Daniel defeated me in our game, meaning he would win the tiebreaker. There's of course a chance that Jaob also wins his last game. Let's quickly check what his opponent is. He plays against Ipogi, and if he is also at 10 points, then we have a 3-way tie. The problem is I also lost my game against Jaob, so the 3-way tie also wouldn't be looking great for me. So I have to hope that Arne loses the game, because if he has 10 points and I have 10 points, I, with the win that I had against him, would win the tiebreaker against him and would get the 2nd place. Then again, of course, it could be possible that Jaob also wins this game, and then it would be quite close with the tiebreaker. I didn't calculate it who would be a 2nd, because I just will play the game anyway and give my best to win it. No, I don't see the benefit in calculating it through in advance. So then it could again be tricky, but if only I win, Jaob and Arne don't, then I still have hopes for the 2nd place, but there are a lot of ifs. So let's see how that season will end for me. Alright, and then I would say we are at the end of the video. I hope it was an interesting game to watch. I think it was quite an interesting, also challenging one to play. I hope I didn't get lost in my explanations, because a lot of time has passed without me noticing it. And yeah, but I hope it was an interesting video for you. Thank you for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.